Have you ever had a happy accident? That's what happened when I mixed this color using Serenity, which is a silk all-in-one Dixie Belle paint, and Fiery Sky, another silk paint. Let's get started. I have this bread box that I got a while ago at the thrift store, and I had painted it. And the reason I had to stop and put it to the side is because I wasn't careful when I painted the inside, and I accidentally kind of painted down and adhered the door to the breadboard shut or open, I guess. And so now it's kind of just like this. So it can no longer be used as a breadboard or any type of like enclosed container. So I figured I could maybe make it into something different, like a planter box or something else that can be used for decor. What I'm going to do is I'm starting by painting the entire piece in this lighter creamy peachy color. This is a paint that I don't usually use. I feel like it's melange paint. I can't remember. But I ended up switching to that beautiful purple color that you just saw me mix up. I had mixed that purple for a completely different project, but once I saw what was inside this month's box, I knew that I had the perfect plan. I used this mix and I am painting the entire box inside and out in this color. Dixie Belle Silk Paint is a very durable paint, and I love that when it dries to a almost flat finish, but the durability on it is incredible. I definitely recommend this type of all-in-one paint. There is a link in the description box below for my friend Shelly's website, The Vintage Hen and Chick, where she sells the chalk paint and the silk all-in-one paints from Dixie Belle. While my box was drying, I began preparing this gorgeous piece. These 3 dragonflies were created by Connie, and this is Connie Lines and Designs. Her channel is The Painted Photographer. You can also find her on Facebook. She does a wide variety of tutorials on how to use the DIY paints in your paintings and to create some amazing artwork. So I'm going to start by dampening an artist brush, and I am going to very gently tear on all the parts of the rice paper to separate these dragonflies into 3. I do like that more jagged edge on this paper, and specifically for this project because I'm going to be decoupaging it onto my box. Even though this rice paper is rather thick, I do want to make sure that I let it stand out, let it pop a little bit, and I do have a very dark purple paint on that box. So I am going to paint the backs of each of these pieces in a white paint. As you know, I like to use my less expensive paints for this because it is not something that will ever show. I really just need a white background. To kind of let these beautiful dragonflies stand out more on my piece, I decided to grab some other scrap papers that I had in my stash. I'm using some of these hymnal music pages, and then I have some pieces from an old book. And I'm going to start by decoupaging that onto the piece first. So I have my music paper. I'm using a liquid patina as my decoupage medium, and I am going to position it in kind of an angled direction. I want this to be, I really like the look of that, especially when doing more of a scrapbook looking project, I guess. I also wanted to kind of offset the dragonfly when I layered on because it is also painted with a music page kind of behind it. I'm adding my liquid patina across the top of that music page, but I'm also going to have it cover a little bit of the rest of the piece where I want to add that dragonfly. So if you look carefully, you can see there's that music page behind the dragonfly painted onto the surface. I am going to add them kind of in a layered effect, and I am going to try to tuck in the pieces of this dragonfly page all the way cupping around the bottom of the box into that groove that you see where the lid was or is, and then up to the little lip that's on the left-hand side. For the largest of the 3 dragonflies, I am going to leave the backing as is. I'm not going to be layering it with any other type of scrap paper. And I'm also going to be decoupaging it onto the side of the box. I felt that it looked perfect. The only other thing that I'm considering when I'm putting this on is just having it angle in a different direction than the first dragonfly I put on the piece. And here is that last little dragonfly on the other side of the box, and it is layered with just an old book page. This book page has a little bit more of a brownish yellow kind of tint to it, so it does look rather different than the hymnal page, which I really liked. I wanted to play with some of those neutral colors within this project. I wanted to add some additional kind of interest to this box, so I'm going to be using these dragonflies from the IOD molds, the ponds. One of them is a pond mold and the other one is the monarch mold, and I'm going to cast these with some amazing casting resin. I'm going to let it set, and then we're going to go ahead and paint them, or I guess color them in some way, and then add them to our piece. I decided on some rub and buff in silver leaf, and that's why I don't know if we really call that painting. Is it considered painting if you're using the rub and buff? I don't know. It is a paintbrush, so we'll just say that. I'm going to cover all three of these little dragonflies with this rub and buff. I think I end up using it twice, so I put on like 2 coats, I guess, of it, just to make sure that it really gets that shimmer that I'm looking for to then adhere them onto my box. For my next project, I have this farmhouse sign, I guess it is. I don't know. I made it back when I first started my crafting journey. Well, for today, I am going to start by covering the entire piece, or at least this entire sign, in a white paint so we can prep it for decoupage. This is the other paper from the box that is from Connie's Lines and Designs, and this paper is called Summer Cottage. As you probably already know, one of the very special things about Sonnet's Maker's box is that the papers that are included are exclusive to her box. You will not be able to obtain these any other way. I guess unless a subscriber gives them to you, but who would want to do that? So make sure that you consider getting onto Sonnet's waiting list for the next time she opens up the options for applying for her membership to this box. I'm going to set up the paper the exact same way I did before, using my little artist brush that has been dampened with some water and ripping the sides off very carefully. I am going to use that liquid patina as my decoupage medium again, and because this is a little bit of a larger piece of paper that I'm going to be decoupaging on, instead of doing the entire back all at the same time, I'm going to start with a starter strip and get some of the paper decoupage down before I move all the way across the piece. Once I have that first part on the left adhered, I'm going to come back with my liquid patina and finish putting the rest of the decoupage medium onto the base so that I can smooth out the rest of the paper. As I do this, I am also taking that liquid patina and running it across the top of the decoupage paper to seal it in and also ensure that we don't have any bubbles or wrinkling happening. I wanted to provide a sturdier base for this sign so it wouldn't topple over as easily. Originally, that was because I wanted to have it be kind of for keys, like a key hook or something that you could use as you like right by the front door, but I have since decided to use it for something else. Either way, I do feel it needs a sturdier base than what it had originally. So I'm using another piece of reclaimed wood, and I'm going to use some E6000 to adhere it down to that piece of wood. Once the decoupage medium was dry on that paper, I decided to take a knife and just very carefully cut where the slats are on the sign behind it. So I figured that this would be an easy way to ensure that it stayed. I didn't want it to rip. I will tell you that trying to cut this was not easy at all. So there was a couple parts where I messed up a little bit, but I did want to somehow get that cut up a little bit also so that I could add some additional decoupage medium to seal it in a little bit further. It's funny the things you notice as you gain experience as a crafter. One of the things that I noticed about this piece is I was not a fan of how I tried to dry brush the reclaimed wood underneath the sign and that stark white that was on the sign at the top. So I wanted to somehow make this look a little bit more cohesive. I'm using some weathered wood by DIY, and I am stippling it on around the edges of my decoupage paper, which I already knew that I needed to frame in somehow. And as you can see, I kind of off-centered it and I didn't really like the way that looked. So I needed to handle that as well. And then I just went ahead and painted the entire rest of the sign in this same color. I sealed that weathered wood with a polyacrylic sealer. And I think this is my first time showing you the back of this piece, but there was a sign on the back that I think said Farmhouse Kitchen. I painted over that with the weathered wood, and I am sealing it in with the same polyacrylic sealer before I move on to the next step. Now, I am no Connie, but I wanted to find some sort of way to blend the decoupage paper with the rest of that sign across the top. So I'm using two of the other colors that we got from Sonnet's Maker's Box, Mint Chip by DIY and Petticoat Pink by DIY, and I'm going to just stipple on in a more dry brushy, very like messy kind of way around the piece to kind of just give it some added interest. I'm doing the mint chip across the entire sign, and then the petticoat pink just around the part where the decoupage paper is. Also decided to paint the back of the sign in the mint chip because I have an idea for the back to kind of add on to this piece and maybe I guess make it reversible. You know I love to do that. I'm sealing that paint as well. I add 2 hooks, one on each side, long ways. I have this adorable toad that Connie had done as part of her spring release, and I am going to cut out the bigger of these 3 toads to put onto the opposite side of the sign. And I think the thing that I love the most is the little daisy that's above his head that almost looks like an umbrella, but it's really just him in front of the daisy. I love it. I decided to add a little bit more interest to the background of this piece. I took out this stamp by IOD. This is the one that looks like bark. I can't remember the name of it right now, and I'm not running to go look. So I will leave that down in the description box below. It, with some IOD stone gray ink, made the perfect backdrop. I just added in a little bit at the bottom so that it was cohesive all the way down the sign. I added a variety of different pieces from this box. All of the decoupage papers had some really cute details. Here is a look at the finished product. I apologize I didn't get everything on camera. But before I show you the other side, I have to show you another piece that came in the box. Sonnet always adds a little freebie in each month's box, and this month there was a beautiful cutout that was designed by CNC DIY Factory. Before I show you that, I am going to take this piece of scrap wood. This is a 2x6, I think, piece of scrap wood that I had in my stash, and I am using some folk art walnut stain, and I am going to cover the entire piece with this stain. I glued that beautiful cutout to that scrap piece of wood, and now I want to embellish it a little bit further. It's going to be the best shelf sitter. I drilled 3 holes and hot glued some beautiful greenery inside each of them. And here's a look at our finished projects. I DIY'd this tray about a year ago, and I learned very quickly that bleed through is a real thing even when you have an all-in-one paint. So this year I am going to kind of upcycle my previous upcycle, and I'm going to try to find a way to do that without having to repaint the bottom. The reason I don't want to repaint the bottom is because I actually loved those little sprig stamps that I had on it, and I wanted to see if I can have them peek through this beautiful paper that came in Sonnet's Maker's Box. This is by Roycycled Treasures, and the music notes are definitely perfect. I am so happy that there is finally a paper that came out with music kind of sheet music on it. I absolutely love it. And the fact that it's intertwined with spring is something I never really thought about doing. I've always thought about music notes and the sheet music with Christmas, but this is incredible. And I'm really excited to show you how this turns out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am actually going to cut this paper prior to decoupaging it onto my piece. I felt that that would be an easier way to go about this rather than trying to do that after the fact. So I am using a what is it, like a blade, a cutter of some kind, and I am going to cut along the edges to cut out the piece so it fits perfectly inside of this tray. Here is my starter strip of liquid patina. This is my decoupage medium, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but liquid patina is a DIY product. I'm sure many of you already know that. After I have the liquid patina on, I'm going to very quickly mist my decoupage paper just a bit so that I can smooth it down and eliminate as many wrinkles as possible. I will say this is the first time in a while that I ended up with wrinkles, but it was a very rough wood that I was decoupaging onto, and there was an unevenness to the slats that were within the tray. So there were some gaps as well as some uneven spaces. You can see here that I found a little bit of a wrinkle. I'm trying to get it out by gently lifting and then lowering my decoupage paper back down to smooth it out. I have become so comfortable and confident with Roycycled's papers. When I used to watch her videos, I couldn't believe how much she was messing with her paper during her projects and not ripping anything. And I was ripping something almost every time. But now that I've almost gotten so used to how to use or how much force to put on it or when you can lift it and when not to, I have really grown to become confident enough to lift and lower this paper and mold this paper while it is wet, while the decoupage medium is down, much better. So one thing I would recommend is if you are, new to decoupage, or if you get frustrated with decoupage but you really, really want to be able to do it, keep practicing. Have multiple papers. This paper is way better than using tissue paper or even napkins, but it is, definitely a lot gentler than maybe a rice paper. So practice makes perfect, and perfect isn't always something we strive for in crafting, but, practice so you love it more. I painted the rest of the tray in Raw Silk by Fusion. This was not part of Sonnet's Maker's Box. It was just one of the paints that I wanted to use up before I open a new one. And I also decided, or I only needed one coat of this because it already had 2 or 3 coats of the white underneath. So even though there was some bleed through, my hope is that by painting it with this one coat over those other ones, then I'm not going to get any bleed through. We'll see. I used some Rub and Buff to kind of spruce up the 2 handles on the tray. This is Spanish copper. I thrifted this container about a year ago, and I've been holding on to it waiting for the perfect project. So I'm really excited that today I finally came up with an idea for this piece. I'm going to start by painting it in this beautiful soft yellow by Fusion, which came in Sonnet's box. Would you be surprised to know that this is one of the colors that I have not tried from Fusion yet? I didn't even know this one existed. I'm going to paint the entire container in this beautiful, soft, buttery cream color. Because this is a lighter color, it did take me about 3 coats to achieve complete coverage. So this is the second coat going on. And then after the third coat, I do let it dry overnight before I try working on the next step. Basically because I didn't want there to be any reason that the paint would chip off or kind of smudge off of this piece. The galvanized metal is, it definitely adhered to it, but I know it's not as much of an adherence as you would get with, let's say, wood or another type of material. As soon as I saw this paint color, I knew that these transfers by IOD would be the perfect embellishment for this bucket. The only challenge that I had was I didn't have enough of them to go all the way around the bucket. I will say it wasn't that huge of a problem because I have an idea for the other side. But first, let's get these transferred onto this side of the planter, bucket, whatever you want to call it. I'm just cutting down some of the piece because I felt as though this is such a long part of the transfer and I didn't want to, I guess, waste too much of it. So I'm going to start by transferring it, starting at one side, allowing some of it to come through, and then slowly pulling up on that transfer sheet to reveal the beautiful transfer. I repeat that step with the other transfers that I have from this set, and then it's time to embellish even further. Just a quick reminder to make sure to burnish your transfers onto your piece. Let's start with Mr. Toad, and then this Buzzy Bee. Let's add one more. For the other side, I decided to go a little bit in a different direction. I am going to use the ephemeral type stamp set and stamp different pieces of it onto the back. What you'll notice is that I'm also going back and forth between adding in some of the other parts of the decoupage paper that came in Sonnet's box by Roycycled, and also going back and forth between that and the IOD ephemeral type stamp. I'm doing this because I want to make sure I have everything kind of positioned and cohesive on the back of this piece. For my last step, I'm going to take some pewter rub and buff and rub it onto the handles, being very mindful to stay away from the actual part of the bucket planter, and also go around the rim with that pewter just to kind of tie it together. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Believe it or not, I have, I think, 3 or 4 other projects that I haven't showed you in today's video from that maker's box, as well as a ton of leftover supplies. So we're gonna just have to do another video sometime soon. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you very soon.